محمد وعلى محمد صلوات.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. So for the next couple of weeks, the youth decided to take the initiative to give the speeches for the Ramadan program. And don't get me wrong, it's not because we don't appreciate the speeches that we already have. It's just that we wanted to bring a different perspective to the table, and just so that you guys can see what we're thinking in our heads, since you guys don't know most of the time. So what I ask of you guys for the next couple of weeks is to keep an open mind. And I know that we might not be the most credible speakers to you guys, but we will build that credibility over time. And so yeah, keep an open mind, and I know that you guys have lived your lives, you guys know everything that possibly there is to know, but let's keep the mindset of the Prophet, because remember that at the age of 40, his entire life has changed. He was given a revelation at that point in time. Most of us, when we reach the age of 40, we think it's downhill from that point on. So let's not do that, and keep an open mind, and just try to learn something from this. So today, Kumail and I will be talking about stereotyping.
All right. So, as you all can see by looking at the PowerPoint slides, our topic is stereotypes. Now, the main thing we wanted to depict in this photo is that we see a hip-hop artist and a cook cooking. And what it says is, be mindful about stereotypes, only one of them is a convicted felon. Now, in this particular photo, you might look at his loud clothing and his sunglasses indoors and his hairstyle, and the biggest one being the color of his skin. But in reality, as many of you already know, Martha Stewart is the convicted felon. Now, this has to do a lot with our frame of reference. Now, what a frame of reference is, it is the set of values and ideas that are instilled within us which form the way we think. Now, a frame of reference has a lot to do with stereotyping because it forms the way we think. And to give you a definition of what stereotype is, it is a set of inaccurate, simplistic generalizations about a group that allows others to categorize them and treat them accordingly. Now, people's minds, when they hear the term stereotype, they go straight to the big one, which is racism. Now, we're not here to talk about racism. We're here to talk about stereotyping. Now, reality is we stereotype in many different ways, even if it is subconscious. The goal is to become conscious so that we can rectify the problem. Now, this was a fact that when Ayaz and I were doing research about our topic, we found it to be pretty astonishing, but when we thought about it, it made a lot of sense. About at the age of 5, many children already have a distinct and definite impression in their minds as to what and who they categorize when they stereotype, whether it has to do with race, whether it has to do with gender, or whether it just has to do with the social groups. And already by the age of 6, children become accurate at sorting people by ethnicity. Now, in our lecture today, we decide to cover not that wide variety of topics, but they all have to do with the same thing. As you can see, we have two major ones, which is appearance and character. Now, under appearance, we have wealth, age, and gender. And under character, we have culture and affiliations. Now, having to do with affiliations, there is a lot of different ways people affiliate other people as, whether it has to do with their occupation, whether it has to do with the way that they speak, whether it even has to do with the way that they react to certain situations whenever they come across them. Now, in this first example, I've come up with an occupational affiliation that many people have. And one of them has to do with thinking the wrong way about anybody's workplace. For example, if you think of a lawyer, the first thing you think of is that they're deceitful. Or for example, when you think of a 7-Eleven worker, the first thing you think about is that they're unambitious or uneducated. But nobody tends to look at the other side of that. And that other side has to do with maybe that 7-Eleven owner is his own boss. Maybe he owns that 7-Eleven. Maybe he has a couple of them. Who knows? And maybe that lawyer is just trying to work his way through criminal law before he gets to environmental law. None of us know. And who are we to judge? And in reality, someone's occupation does not define who they are. Another form of affiliation is those who we surround ourselves with. People tend to categorize those they see. If they're hanging out with a certain group of friends, they categorize them for who they're hanging out with and not for who they are. Take me, for example. I don't hang out with many people that wear dress pants and dress shirts. I hang out with more people that wear loose clothing, chains that connect to their wallets. And they wear a hat here and there and a beanie. People look at them and they'll think, oh, okay, Kumail's definitely affiliated in a gang of some sort. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. Maybe the clothes are just comfortable. Who are we to know? That's just how they like to wear them. Another large form that I'm sure a lot of us can relate to when it comes to our parents or grandparents, we did not have this problem, but it has to do with language. A language barrier is a huge problem that many people have when they talk to someone, or when they say a word here and there differently, they think of something. They think, okay, these guys, they don't know what they're talking about. Their ability to adapt to situations has already been different based off of how they speak the language. Now, for example, if you're a child and you're in a kindergarten class, this happened when Maria, my sister, went to school. This happened when myself and my brother went to school. I'm sure it happened when Ayaz, and everybody else went to school. And when we heard one of our classmates speak a little differently already at such a young age in preschool or kindergarten, we think, why do they sound so different? Are they challenged in some way? Where are they from? And then some people will even go far enough to make fun of those who speak a little differently. And this happened. I'm sure all of us have seen it, and we know. We know that this does happen on a day-to-day basis, and we have to remember that this does not define who we are, but in fact it allows us to share our own learning and experiences with people from whether it be another country, whether it be from a different culture that we learn from home. No matter what it is, we cannot let it define who we are and how we treat other people.
Another big part of culture is how people react to certain situations. Now, a big part of how we speak or how we think or how we react to situations is based on the environment we grow up in and the culture that is instilled in us. And a good example of this is moving out after college. I know it's a big example in our community, but think about majority of the time Caucasians, they want their kids to move out after college. And a lot of people tend to think, oh, they're just trying to get rid of their kids. They don't want to deal with them anymore. But the reality is their intentions are to have those kids become more independent and responsible and have them experience the world. Now on the flip side, a lot of Asian cultures like to keep their kids at home until marriage. And there's nothing wrong with that, and their intentions are to be financially smart and to keep their children safe. And other cultures, other opposing cultures may look at this as, oh, they're trying to track their children at home. They don't want them to leave. They want to keep an eye on them all the time. What are they doing with their kids? They're irresponsible. So I'm not saying either culture is wrong. It's just that the way we view the opposing culture should be different. It shouldn't be, oh, they're doing it wrong. They're raising their kids the wrong way. It doesn't mean that. We all become successful in one way or another. It doesn't mean that the parenting is wrong and the wrong way of doing it.
Now, another big topic which we had already shown you guys is wealth. Now, a lot of people think, well, what does wealth have to do with stereotyping? But you'll be surprised, a lot actually. Financial wealth is associated with many things, but the most important are power, education, and respect. Comparing frames of references here, bear with us. First one is wealthy versus wealthy. Now, if a wealthy man is looking at another wealthy individual, you think, oh, I'm jealous of what they have. I need to do more in order to get myself to where they are. Now, whether they have it already, whether they wanted to go from a 3 series to a 5 series, whatever the case may be, everybody does it all the time. Now, common aspect of this is greed. Because when we see someone have what we want, first thing that comes to our mind is jealousy, which is greed. Now, greed can intoxicate people into doing things that would generally be against their own morals. For example, when Hitler's decision to invade Russia, when he had already conquered so many nearby countries, what did that do? He had forced all of his forces to go into Russia at that time, and at that same time, Britain and US were both coming up with a plan, devising it, and implemented it, which worked, that ended up being towards Hitler's demise. Now his greed, what did it do? Ended up being his only defeat. But now for a more optimistic outlook, jealousy can also form competitiveness. Now between peers, between students, between whatever the case is, competitiveness is what drives us to excel. When I see Ayaz doing something better than me, I say, I can do it better than him, and I'll go one up. Then he'll see me do it, and then he'll want to go one up. And one by one, we'll just keep going with each other. Now, in our minds, we think, I can't stand him. You know, he keeps beating me, and then I have to do it again. But no, in the end of the day, if he wasn't around, I would stay right here. And he would always be right here, but we would never know about each other. But competitive nature, that's something we should all embrace, and not look at someone with eyes that are formed of hatred, but rather with respect, rather with looking towards someone and say, we can use each other. We can utilize one another and become not only personally, but financially better for the both of us.
So let's take a very sensitive topic, looking from the frame of reference of a wealthy person looking at a less fortunate person. Now, when this happens, assumptions come into play, like, for example, when you see a less fortunate person, you think, oh, they're uneducated, or they're unambitious, they don't want to do anything with their life. What are they doing? They're just sitting there being homeless, not just being helpless all the time. And instead of thinking like that, maybe we should think, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. There could be a million reasons as to why they didn't finish their education. And examples of this happen all the time, whether it be them not having a nurturing environment, or not being in a financially stable family, or just growing up in a city that doesn't allow them to finish their education.
You know, actually that reminds me of an example. I knew a friend in high school, my sophomore year. His name was Nick. He was an extremely smart individual. He was, we all thought he would be able to go play college ball under a very, very nice scholarship. And I had known him since 7th grade. The beginning of our 10th grade year, him and I both came to the first day of school, me excited as ever, trying to join the basketball team, wanting to aspire as much as I could in school. And he comes to me and he says, I have to drop out of school. 10th grade, that puts him at 15, 16 years old, and he's telling me he has to drop out of school. I asked him why. Nick, why do you have to go out of school? What's the problem? And he said, not only is my father never around because of his occupation, he was there for them, but he could not be at home. His mother was a constant drug abuser. And because of this, he had to quit school, get 2 jobs, and go home to not only help the well-being of his mother, but to help sustain his 4 younger siblings. And when I heard that at such a young age, I never really understood why he had to do that. But now when I look back on it, I see it was necessary. It's what he needed to do. But till today, I look back and I can think of where I am today and where Nick is today. And I don't know, but all I do know is that he can't be as satisfied as he wanted to be.
So, I mean, examples of this happen all the time around us, and we need to take these into consideration when we see the less fortunate around us. You know, when we see a homeless person asking us for money, what's the first thing that comes to our mind? Oh, they're going to go buy alcohol or drugs with that. Why should I give them the money? But instead, think about the stories like this that may happen once in a while. And don't generalize that every one of them is going to buy alcohol. Empathize with them. Give them a hand. And when I say give them a hand, I don't mean give them a couple bucks. I mean give them the opportunity to be the thing that they never got the opportunity to be. Maybe give them a job. You'll never know how surprised you'll be as to how hardworking they are. So let's switch the tables around and see how a poor person may look at a wealthy individual. And again, jealousy hits hard. It hits even harder from this standpoint. They feel that, why can't I have that money? Why can't I be there? And the main thing that comes to play is, oh, that person probably got the money through corruption, or they're spoiled. You know, all wealthy people are corrupt, right? That's just how it is. When we see a wealthy person, oh, they did something illegal to get it, or they sued the banks because of it, or whatever it may be. That's how we think. But let's try to take another optimistic point of view from a poor person looking at a wealthy person. use that as motivation to want to reach that financial status. And I'm not saying wealth is everything in life, but it is okay to be financially excelling and wanting more, because it does make you better as a person also. So now that we've covered those three, let's try to look at how a poor person may look at another poor person. And a lot of times, from what I've seen and experienced, is that one person may say, you know, they don't know how bad I have it. It's always that person that has it the worst. But just know that there's someone out there that has it 10 times worse than you. It's always like that. And a perfect example of this is during the French Revolution. Now, for those of you guys who remember your history, it was a time of economic crisis, but not really. The government was stealing the money. The citizens had to fight for pieces of bread. And they would all try to go and get the bread, and they would never share with each other. They would only try to feed their own families because, you know, they had it the worst. It was never, nobody had it worse than me. And it wasn't until 10 years later that they realized that the solution to this was to come together and overthrow the government. And it wasn't until then that they felt the satisfaction of becoming united and excelling because of that. And so as the people in the French Revolution did, we should always come together. And that's the only way we will excel, is by coming together, working off each other, and like Kumail was saying, one up each other all the time so that we can excel and progress. As a person, financially, whatever it be, spiritually, that would be the best.
Now moving on to our next topic, we have one that we as young individuals and elder individuals that we all take into account is age. Age discrimination is not something any of us like to admit that we do, but I do it, not intentionally. I'm sure you do it, not intentionally. But at the end of the day, age is one of the main things we look at when we see someone. When we see an elderly person, we look at them and we say, oh wow, that person is so wise. When we see a younger individual, we're like, oh, they're so innocent and there's so much to learn and live. Unfortunately, that's just a fairy tale. When the elderly are speaking, we're saying, oh, come on, this guy's senile, stop talking. When a younger person is speaking, you say, they're too inexperienced, what do they know? They have so much to learn. But at the end of the day, these type of opinions are what's causing the conflicts that we have all the time. We're supposed to see each other as equals. And I'm not saying a 20-year-old is going to see a 60-year-old as his equal. I'm saying you should be able to see each other in a way where you can respect your opinion, where you can look at one another and say, even though you're younger, you're looking at it through a different lens than I am. I'm looking at it through hardship, you're looking at it through inexperience, but at the same time, purity. Your mindset hasn't been jogged to think a certain way because of your experiences yet. Now, the young have a lot to bring to the table, whether they're given credit for it or not. When a child is speaking, do not discount them because of their inexperience. This is because they are looking at the world through an unbiased lens. We should use this unbiased viewpoint in order to be impartial in matters and situations. However, the young adults have the gift of being the most relevant form of society within them. Not only are they capable of viewing the world objectively, they also are aware of the realities of the harsh and cruel world. Now, the elderly have gone through an experience, but the things that they have to bring to the table are wisdom, and if you combine wisdom and innocence, which many elderlies that I know, they've been able to look beyond just being wise, but they also have the ability to remember what it is like to look at the world through innocence and purity. And when you combine both those two, in my idea, it's the best outcome that you can get to.
And everything between young adulthood and elderly, just a midlife crisis. So, a perfect example of respecting age discrimination, it was during the time of Prophet Dawood. There was a man named John, and he had a flock of sheep. And this flock of sheep raided some plantation who was owned by Eliah, and the sheep ate everything on the plantation. So Eliah and John went to Prophet Dawood to settle the matter. And Prophet Dawood said, okay, John, give all your sheep to Eliah as compensation for all the lost plantation. Now, Prophet Suleiman, who was the son of Prophet Dawood, was only 11 at the time, went to his father with a better solution. He said, "Dad, why don't you have John rebuild the entire plantation, while at the same time Elia can take the sheep for livelihood in the meantime." So this is a perfect example of a father listening to his 11-year-old son for a better solution, because he was looking at the world through an impartial lens. And this form of stereotyping happens every day, and it causes so much conflict and unnecessary barrier. And even though all ages are not equal, they all bring a positive aspect to life.
All right. Now for our final topic. This is one that Ayaz and I had a particular time enjoying writing it, but it was very difficult, is gender. Now, I'm fully aware of all the similarities that men and women have. But we are here today to speak about their individual qualities. Now, for starters, let's start off by talking about all our negative stereotypes. The first one being is we as men have the ability to make very rash and impulsive decisions, whether it's buying the most expensive thing in a store, or whether it's the way we choose to discipline our children.
Or starting a war.
Or starting a war. Another terrible assumption is that we are very lazy.
Hey, I checked that.
When are you going to fix the dishwasher? When are you going to change the light bulb?
Tomorrow. The one that really takes the cake would have to be our pride. Intentionally or unintentionally, men have a very difficult time backing down. And from any situation, now I want to ask all of you, how many, in the ladies first, how many uncles and dads and grandfathers and brothers do you know that would back down from the situation? Don't worry, I'll wait. Didn't think so. Now, to get to the less sensitive topic, of course, the negative female stereotypes. Now I have been told by outside sources that women can be very difficult to understand. And they also have quite the tendency to be a tad bit demanding. Also, they have a trouble detaching themselves from situations emotionally.
I'll be very careful with that.
So, now it's my turn to save his butt. So I'll talk about the positive female stereotypes that there are. So women have the great ability to multitask. They can cook and clean at the same time. I'm just kidding, I'm totally kidding.
We didn't write that down.
Obviously women are much more understanding than men, I'll give them that. Without our mothers and them, their understanding ability, where would we be?
Walk it up.
And of course, they're much more nourishing than we are. And males have some positive stereotypes also. We tend to be a bit more protective than the female gender, and bravery, I suppose. And that's all we could think of. There's nothing more, much more to men. So, I mean, the reason we listed these out is to point out that regardless of the negative or positive stereotypes, it's not okay to have them. Because obviously a negative stereotype is just bad to have in general, but a positive stereotype just sets expectations upon the other gender. And it's not okay to do that, because then we have this society of making fun of the other gender. And yes, I did make some jokes, and we always do, but there is some truth behind them, and we shouldn't do that. So, and Albert Einstein had a great quote, and it says, "Men marry women with the hope that they will never change. Women marry men with the hope that they will change. Invariably, they are both disappointed."
Now, to conclude, we have discussed these forms of stereotyping. We hope that you are more conscious about your thought process. The more we are able to bring this to our own attention, the more we can fix it. If we are able to mend these smaller types of stereotypes, we will be able to tackle the larger cause, which is racism. Speaking from personal experience, and as much as I hate to admit it, I can be racist at times. Even though I will not outwardly say racist comments, I still do feel it in my heart whenever I say a joke here and there. Now, Uncle Hasnain, we tried to find an Urdu couplet, but we didn't really know where to search. So, as a once wise baboon told a lost and lonely lion, look beyond what you see. So let's all take this time to look further than the skin, the wallet, and gender, and accept each other for the beautiful individuals that we are. Assalamu alaikum. I appreciate your time, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak in front of you today.
So stay tuned for tomorrow's lecture. It'll be on the positive effects of optimism and the negative effects of pessimism, and it's a really good topic
To be here.
Who are the presenters?
Mason and Ayaz.
And the presentation is before iftar, correct? Tomorrow?
Yes, it is before the fact.
Good job.